Hello, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Wright Experience. I'm Dr. William T. Wright Jr., the founder and host of this show. It is my absolute pleasure to get this show going back again. We missed a week or two in my transition to my new role, and so we're certainly excited about being able to bring these podcasts to you. And tonight I have an amazing guest that I've known for well over 20 years. My guest tonight is no stranger to education and certainly educational leadership. He has matriculated over his career from his start as an English teacher in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. He's also served as an assistant principal in Edgecombe County. He worked some time in Nash Rocky Mount schools. And then went on to an amazing career at the Chatham County Schools, both as an associate superintendent and as a superintendent for several years. And most recently, now he is the deputy superintendent of at the North Carolina Public Instruction in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so we are certainly thrilled and honored to have as our guest tonight, Dr. Derrick D. Jordan. And so at this time, I'm going to bring him on so we can get going on our podcast tonight. So this time, I'd like to welcome my friend and brother, not fraternity brother. He and I might be glad about that. I don't know, but anyway, we mess with each other about that all the time. But he's one of the smartest Kappas I know. How about that now, Jordan?
I only know smart Kappas.
Oh, wow. Really? No, I'm just kidding. But welcome to the Wright Experience, Dr. Jordan. I'm so glad to have you here tonight, and certainly counted an honor to get. We had tried to do this a couple of times, and some things came up, so it's a pleasure to finally have you on the podcast.
Dr. Wright, thank you for the opportunity. I regret that we had some hiccups the initial time I lost my grandfather, and so I appreciate you reaching back out and giving me this opportunity. Congratulations on your new role. North Carolina's loss is certainly South Carolina's gain. And
well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. I'll slip you a 20 later or something like that. Just kidding. Dr. Jordan, you have done some amazing work throughout your career. I had an opportunity to follow it. You know, we've been on the phone talking back and forth to each other for our entire careers, and certainly we both have been blessed. You know, we got our start as principals in Edgecombe County together, and when one of us moved, of course, the other ones kind of had their back, and you know, we just did what we needed to do, and we've certainly come a long way, haven't we? So,
absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your role now. You are now Deputy Superintendent at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. So talk to us about what that role entails.
So in my role, I am one of three Deputy State Superintendents, and I have the awesome pleasure of serving as a part of the leadership team there at the State Department of Public Instruction under the leadership of our State Superintendent, Catherine Truitt. I oversee primarily the educator advancement section as well as the student advancement section. So that includes educator recruitment. We know that there is a teacher shortage, and so identifying ways to fill the gap and ensure that every student has the opportunity to have a highly qualified, effective teacher in their classroom is critically important to this administration. And so educator recruitment is a part of that work, and ensuring that we are identifying partnerships to cultivate and increase the recruitment efforts. Also, licensure. We know that every teacher in the state of North Carolina, every educator in the state of North Carolina has to be licensed. And so that is a huge element of the Department of Public Instruction. On the student advancement side, I have the awesome opportunity to work with our exceptional children's area, where we support all of our students with disabilities across the state in schools from Murphy to Manteo. And also we serve the schools for the deaf and the school for the blind. And a lot of people are unaware of those schools, but those are statewide schools that serve students with those disabilities, again, across the state. And excited about this opportunity also to zero in on a number of human capital pieces, and also work alongside of our team as we support superintendents and other leaders within the school districts in North Carolina.
Sounds like some amazing responsibility, but also some good opportunity to use the expertise that you've gained over the years to help benefit students and staff. So speaking of teacher recruitment, let's go to that one for a minute. All across, of course, the United States, and particularly, I think even doubly so in the southeastern United States, North Carolina, South Carolina, we're having some trouble right now. If you look at vacancies across districts, they're growing by leaps and bounds. I don't even want to call out the numbers where I am now, but we need teachers. What do we need to do differently or better to make sure that we are recruiting and retaining teachers for our children?
I think that's a complex issue, and it's going to require us to do atypical business as opposed to business as usual. I think that we are going to have to acknowledge the fact that teachers are the foundation, and we're going to have to return the respect that once was synonymous with the term teacher. We have to make sure that teachers know and understand that the work that they do is critically important to everything else. And that's step one. I think that step two is ensuring that we identify ways to recognize the level of work that teachers are doing, whether that is through some effort to retool how teachers are paid, whether that is an opportunity to zero in on opportunities to reward them for going the extra mile. Whatever it is, it has to go a ways in ensuring that teachers are able to pay the bills and feel well compensated, much like their other non-education folks in other professions. And I also think that we are going to have to identify ways to bridge the gaps between homeschool and the community. I think that what has happened over time, unfortunately, is that we have, in some cases, built fortress schools, schools where, as educators, we don't want people from the outside coming in. And the reverse is also the case, where people on the outside aren't trying to get in. And so figuring out how we can ignite symbiotic relationships wherein the community, the folks who are loving on our kids when they leave our schools, and the people within the walls of the schools are locking arms and rowing in the same direction, recognizing that at the end of the day, the stakes are high. It is critically important that we do what's necessary to ensure that our students maximize outcomes to the fullest extent possible. So it's absolutely a complex issue. There is not one strategy that is going to fill this gap for as long as I've been in education and for as long as you've been in education, because we're neck and neck. There has always been somewhat of a gap, but we are absolutely seeing the gap widening. And so we're going to have to do unusual business as opposed to that business as usual. And I should have mentioned that also. I think creative pathways into education will also be critically necessary. I've seen some solid folks come as a result of troops to teachers or lateral entry. Now we have teacher residencies, and I think that all of those alternative paths to the classroom are critically important, and
Right.
making sure that those are available to folks who may want to look at education as a second career need to be in place for those individuals.
So I, in addition to that, I'm gonna add a couple of things that the Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction may not be able to say, but I can. Uh, One thing that I think too, in addition to everything you said, and by the way, you know what you talked about is we need everybody. We need, if we're really going to try to educate the whole child, we need everybody on board. That's part of what I heard you say.
Absolutely.
But in industry, in banking, doesn't make any difference what the field is. Just about everywhere except education, the supervisor or the boss's approval has a whole lot to do with whether or not a person continues to be employed. Yet teachers come in and they have alternative licensure requirements and what have you, and then we can be doing everything right, we can have good evaluations, but if we don't pass that test, then at some point we're out. And so for me, we also, in addition to all the other things that you talked about, we've got to value more, in my opinion, what the folks that are working with these new upcoming teachers are saying and doing every day, because I think at the end of the day, if we are educators that have our administration degrees and we've been evaluating teachers for time, and we got a good veteran principal that has evaluated teacher X, who might be a lateral entry teacher who's come in and done some really good work, that ought to hold some value, I think, in addition to all of the other things that we do. And so, that might be something that we need to add as well. But I also think, and you touched on this point, and I think it's so critical, the teacher that we are getting in most of our schools now is not the traditional teacher ed person like yourself. I came in as what they call provisional license. I was a business administration major, came in and did what I needed to do. And they need both of us. They need, the teacher ed person, and they need, we need also those alternative licensure people to make a good, well-rounded school and to give children what they need, in my opinion. So that's great stuff. That is great.
You nailed it. And I'll just add one last piece, and comments triggered it for me. Supports, making sure that once we get these folks in the classroom, whether they are traditionally educated, meaning that they came through a 4-year education prep program, or whether they came in through an alternative program, they need support once they arrive. And what that support looks like will vary from teacher to teacher, school to school, and ensuring that whatever those supports are within reason, making sure that those are provided in a way to help increase the potential for the teacher to persist and remain, and ultimately be highly effective.
All right. And then Dr. Jordan, there's that P word. We keep talking about, if we treat them right and all of that. And yes, we do need to treat folks right. Yes, we do need to support them. Yes, we do need to, but there's that P word. We got to pay them too.
Sure.
And 1998 is when I started teaching. I was telling somebody this the other day. Entry level salary, 1998, was $24,000 a year. And we know what it is right now, about 37 in North Carolina, and a little bit more than that in South Carolina, by the way. But we gotta address that as well. I know you might not be able to say that, but I can.
Well, I think that pay certainly is important. I think that people work with the hope of being able to pay bills.
That's right.
Take care of all the things that you need, and at least some of the things that you want.
That's right.
And in as much as North Carolina's pay for teachers continues to need to be tweaked, just as is the case in many other areas, North Carolina does have some things that other states don't have. And
That's right.
so zeroing in on what the most ideal compensation package is, I think, is always going to need to be at the top of educational conversations.
That's
Because one of the things that we hear is that, hey, if I were a blank with a 4-year degree, I could make X. And so when you start hearing those comparisons, sometimes people walk away feeling demoralized. So really zeroing in on what the market rate is, ensuring that the salaries are competitive, recognizing that many teachers work well beyond the 8-hour day, and ensuring that at the end of the day, this issue of pay, or the P, as you called it, doesn't fall by the wayside. People want to know that it's a topic of discussion, and they want to certainly see forward movement, and that's understandable.
Sure, absolutely. So Dr. Jordan, I remember those days when we had the same name school, but yours just had the word North and mine had the word South. You remember those days?
Absolutely.
And I think I was 37 when I went to South Edgecombe, and I'm quite a bit. So you were a young man, probably young, maybe you know this, it might have been the youngest principal ever at North Edgecombe High School, probably. Is that right?
Certainly one of, if
right.
not
one of for sure. But nowadays, we're well along in our career. So what advice would you give to a leader who was stepping into perhaps maybe their first principalship, and then those that are in the principalship, kind of a twofold question, and those that are in the principalship that are aspiring to be district office personnel and possibly a school superintendent at some point? What advice would you give them?
So I'll say that my advice for entry-level leaders or aspiring leaders generally is the same. And it's as follows: identify mentors. And I am a firm believer that you need at least two. Okay. You need one internal to your organization, someone who has been around, established himself or herself, been successful, and you need someone external to the organization who can give you some fresh eyes. So that mentorship piece is absolutely important. And I think that the same is likely true for you, what I'm about to say. Without having had some of the mentors that I've had over the years, I don't think that I would have been able to navigate the complexities of administration. So that's the first thing, having those mentors, internal and external. I think the second thing is to ensure that you have your moral compass solidly wound up, making sure that you know exactly what the hills are that you're willing to die on. I think that sometimes people go into leadership and they don't have that moral compass firmly established. And so they flip-flop and they're always in flux. But when you have a solid moral compass and you know those hills upon which you're willing to die, then you are more likely to consistently make solid decisions that you believe to be in the best interest of those you serve, and particularly the students you serve. The third one is take care of yourself, because this work is hard work. And I remember when I was a teacher and I said, this grading papers and some of this other stuff is becoming a bit much. I think I'll get me an MSA and become an assistant principal, because surely if I get the opportunity to tell others what to do, then I can take some time for myself. And let me just say, I've kind of had that in the back of my head every time I made a step, and every time I've recognized that it doesn't matter what your role is. If you're serious about the work, you're going to work hard. And so those of us who work hard sometimes don't know how to turn it off. So the last important piece of advice that I would offer is take care of yourself, love on your family, recognize that you're human and you need to recharge those batteries. And unfortunately, if you don't do it, your body has a way of forcing it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't allow your body to force it. Systematically work on that so that you can stay geared up and in the game and able to do the work.
And so those advice tips that you're giving are really for aspiring principals, it sounds like, and even as you matriculate throughout leadership in general, is just keeping those things in mind. And yes, from the mentors standpoint, and we had some of the same ones probably early in our career. You also wanted, as you kind of alluded to, you also want people that will tell you the truth and not not always just what you want to hear. People that'll put you in check and say, "Hey, buddy, you don't want to go off this cliff here." You want to, and so that's so important. And in my case, some of those same folks that, how long has that been ago? 15, 16 years ago when we were principals. Some of those same folks I'm calling on right now.
Absolutely.
Even in my role, even if they've not been superintendents, they can still be helpful because they know William, and so, and then I think also having peers that can sometimes provide mentor kind of advice like you and I have been able to do over the years, I think is very helpful as well. Sure.
I'll tell you that peer piece, and I'll tell you, I count some of my peers just like you as mentors. I believe that if you are unable to identify someone who you can have those late night, early morning conversations with, and as you said, know that they're going to tell you the truth, then you're going to likely struggle to make some of the most complex decisions.
That's right.
And I just can't tell you how many over the years folks that I've been able to tap into simply because they recognized that I was committed to the work, and I saw something in them that I thought could help propel me, and they accepted my call, and the rest is history. So that mentor piece, I just cannot I can't express how important it is.
Amen. Dr. Jordan, as we continue to work throughout this profession that we're in, I notice, I won't put you on the spot unless you choose to get in there, but I've noticed that the number of African-American males in our profession seems to be dwindling, and also just our ability to be able to keep those folks employed and going and helping young folks. What can be done about that? Have you noticed that, first of all, and then what can be done about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we know that in education, we have a strong need to further diversify the ranks, particularly when we're talking about administration. I'm a fan of affinity groups. I think that having the opportunity to engage with folks within a network is critically important to professional development and professional maturation. I think that it is absolutely important that we be committed to engaging, back to that mentorship piece, back to that peer piece. Right. We have to be willing to pick up the phone and have conversations with each other. We have to go where some of these folks are. So when we're talking about wanting to diversify the educational ranks, understanding that the numbers are decreasing in some cases when you consider who's in our schools of education, and we hope we're going to turn a corner there. But we have to go where the students are. And so when you talk about trying to diversify the ranks, you can't be serious about that if you're not going to be going to HBCUs, for example. I think that recognizing the concentrations of minority students who matriculate through HBCUs, that has to be one of your top necessary strategies for ensuring that you diversify the ranks. I think that we also have to ensure that we're being honest about the work. We have to zero in on the fact that your experience may not be my experience.
That's right.
And depending on where you are and sometimes even who you are, you can absolutely have some stumbles that you're not prepared for. Right. And recognizing that you won't ever be prepared for all of them, it absolutely ought to be at the top of the list to ensure that we are helping each other be as prepared as we can. And also, with respect to preparation programs, Dr. Wright, I've been teaching in an MSA program for a decade or more. Okay. And what I appreciate about that is the university has committed to ensuring that those aspiring administrators get to hear from people like me, right. People who are in the field every day, who can give you frontline exposure to what went wrong this afternoon, or how you handled a complex situation, but ensuring that we bridge that gap between theory and practice. It's absolutely awesome to have the research and to talk about what the numbers say, but sometimes what the numbers say may not line up with what you know to be true in your work. Right. And so having practitioners come in and help train these folks, particularly when we're talking about diversification and knowing that there is a small number of minority superintendents in North Carolina now, and recognizing that it should be my duty to get out there and help ensure that people know that you did it, I did it, and they can do it too.
That's right. That's right. And I was going to get to your work at the University of never mind. you knew I was going to do that, didn't you? But you're so right. I remember my very first class. I think this gentleman is retired now, so I won't call his name. But my very first class in the MSA program, somebody asked the professor, said, "Well, when's the last time you've been inside a public school?" And we're expecting, I'm still in it, like you said, or what have you. He said it'd been 27 years. It's like, wow, this is going to be interesting. So you're right. Universities will do themselves a great service if they have people that are practitioners, as you're saying, training the next group of aspiring leaders. That's so critical. That is absolutely so critical, because schools in 2022 and beyond are different than they were when you were on the north side and I was on the south side. They're just different. And so, and thank you for that. So talk to us about that adjunct professor work. There might be some folks on this listening to this podcast who might have that interest. They could be practitioners and they're looking to get into the work of adjunct professorship. So talk to us a little bit about what that process is like and how that's done and so forth.
First, let me tell you, it's very therapeutic for me. I see it as an opportunity to engage with people. I learn from my students just as much, if not more, than what they learn from me. I was fortunate. I attended UNC Chapel Hill, and the faculty identified me as a Jackson Scholar. And what that meant, thank you very much. What that meant was that I had the opportunity to work alongside of the faculty and attend conferences and such. And those conferences and the entire program was centered on trying to increase the number of minority faculty. And so I would just encourage anyone who's interested in teaching, whether part-time or full-time. If you're enrolled in a program now, find out what programs might be available for you, and see if you can take advantage of those and learn kind of what the lay of the land is when it comes to higher ed, because higher ed is definitely different than K-12. But I believe, kind of building on what we've already said, I believe so strongly in the need for that practitioner piece that as a part of my course, I always have practitioners come and provide guest lecture around a particular topic. And every semester I hear from students about how important it was for them to hear from those folks who have boots on the ground, those folks who recognize that sometimes just because it's in the book doesn't make it so.
Right.
And so that is an element that I plan to continue and wish that others would adopt. I've also had the awesome opportunity to supervise principal interns, and that is really what we call mission work. You're from Eastern North Carolina, so you know what that means. Getting out into those schools, seeing those interns in their element, talking to them about the problems of the day and helping them to identify solutions to those problems. That is absolutely exciting. It gives me hope when I think about where I see some of those students start and where they end up by the time that they are preparing to conclude their internship. But I will just say, again, much like I said about teacher prep, ed leadership prep has got to change with the times as well. We have to make sure that we know and understand that leadership work requires you to be malleable. It requires that you be able to take complex issues and generate some solutions for solving those issues in a short span of time. When you and I were in graduate school the first time, they had something called inboxes.
That's right.
Where basically you would get all of these various scenarios, issues, real issues that would come to the principal's desk or the assistant principal's desk. And then you had to figure out how in the world you were going to make it all better.
Right.
And I really enjoy learning through that methodology, because watching and listening to others problem solve helped me to fine tune my ability to problem solve.
It helped prepare us at least a little bit for when those situations came, didn't it?
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Jordan, kind of as a closure, so to speak, or kind of as a wrap up, is there anything that I missed talking to you about tonight that you think might be of value to our audience in an additional way?
I think you hit some really important pieces. I will just say that despite the narratives, education remains one of the most important professions.
Absolutely.
Everybody has to have a teacher. And so I just want to say, and not mix words in saying it, that irrespective of what we hear from time to time about the ineffectiveness of public education and or other pieces, the truth is that there's a lot to be proud of when you really peel back the layers and dive deeply into public education. And so it is necessary for folks to recognize that many times the greatest hope for our students beyond graduation is a solid education. And that is why having high quality, effective teachers in the classroom is so important. I also think it's important for me to just underscore that it's not just teachers who make a difference in these schools.
Amen.
Sometimes we overlook, unintentionally so, we overlook some of those folks who help to ensure that our students are nourished, that they get to and from school safely, that the bills are paid, and the list goes on and on and on. So a message that I want to make sure that I put out there before we conclude is that it takes everybody in these schools to propel students to the highest heights possible. And so when we talk about education, sometimes we are only talking about teachers. We only hear about teachers and principals, but it absolutely takes everybody in those buildings in order to get that work done and get it done in a way that generates dividends.
Yes, sir. That's that all-inclusive environment. If you believe for one moment, and I use the term direct instructors and indirect instructors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have the folks that are in the classrooms every day, teachers, assistants,
Mm-hmm.
and then I prefer to call the support personnel indirect instruction. And here's why. Let our bus drivers decide that they're going to take a day off or a week off and see how much schooling we get done. So, and then that work that they do in the morning, greeting them and how's your day and how things going with you, and making sure they deliver them back home safely. Our food service workers, our maintenance folks, making sure that the environments are conducive for learning, and on and on and on. You're exactly right. We absolutely need everybody, all hands on deck. Folks that do tutoring for us after school. I mean, we could go on, and we recognize that, and we want the community at large also to make sure that they understand that this thing is bigger than leadership. It's bigger than what goes on in the classroom. It's all of us working together. And like I said, I choose to call that all-inclusive environments. We need everybody to do this work that we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Dr. Jordan, if you'll hold on with me for a minute, we'll come back and close out the show.
Absolutely.
My guest next week will be Dr. Lisa Jackson. Dr. Jackson is the superintendent of Pamlico County Schools in North Carolina. I also have, in the next few weeks, we will be infusing some guests from the state of South Carolina, where I am working and serving now, as well as other southeastern states, in addition to my home state of North Carolina. So please be sure to continue to be a part of what we're doing here at the Wright Experience. I'm absolutely excited about the future of this podcast. I am now learning more and more and more about my viewership and the audience and the people that are watching what we're trying to do here. I'm absolutely proud. Dr. Jordan asked me pre-show tonight when we started this show. We started in February of 2021, believe it or not. So we're at about a year and a half in the show, and I'm absolutely thrilled. Tonight's episode, I think, is the 64th episode, and it's just been an amazing experience for me that I'm looking forward to continuing just as long as I'm able to, and as long as you all are enjoying the content that we're trying to produce. So thank you for being a captive and listening audience. And Dr. Jordan, I just want to thank you, my friend, for first of all being that mentor and that peer and that person that we can have those conversations whenever we need to help support each other and keep it real with each other. And my brother, we've been doing that for seems like close to 20 years. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate you, and I'm so proud of the leadership that you're providing and continuing to provide for the children in the state of North Carolina and throughout the southeastern United States, and the work that you've done as an adjunct professor and as well as in your leadership. Certainly proud of you, and thank you for being part of this Wright Experience podcast.
And right back at you, I want to say thank you for providing this opportunity. It is yet another strategy for ensuring that we are equipping the next group of leaders with the tools necessary to be successful. We're proud of you. We're glad that you still call North Carolina home, and we know you're going to do great things in South Carolina, and look forward to our continued work together, irrespective of geography.
Oh, I thought you were going to say irrespective of.
Some things don't need to be said.
But to the Wright Experience audience, I want to thank you for watching. Good evening.